Good morning on this beautiful spring day. Being spring, of course, we are seeing an emergence of summer plants. Now, a lot of those humans consider weeds. Remembering a weed is just a plant out of context in the human eyes. So in fact, a sunflower would be a weed in a maize land and what have you. To combat the weeds is expensive. Now, I get a lot of questions about our spraying program. What people must understand is that we don't just spray willy-nilly. We don't go throwing chemicals around all over the place. We've got a team of professionals that advise us and actually do the spraying. And you'll see them around the estate, serviced. So I've invited Kobus along today. He's in charge of the serviced spraying program. Just to explain a little bit more about what they use, how they use it, when they use it. And that way, hopefully, just allay some of the fears. And I will admit that spraying does make me a bit nervous as well, but knowing that it's done professionally. So I'm going to hand over to Kobus and let him give you the information.
So basically I was just going to talk about the three main products that we actually use on the site to combat weeds, as you say, because obviously mechanical removal of weeds is very, very expensive, and that's why we revert to chemicals to help us do the job quicker and easier. And at the end of the day, it's cost saving.
That would mean that we don't have to increase levies and things like that.
That's correct. Yes, that's correct. So basically, like the guy is spraying here at the back, he's spraying Outpace Super, which is specially a product for hard surfaces. It's a systemic product. It goes into the weed and it actually kills off the weed into the roots of it. And so, because if you mechanically remove it, sometimes like the guys just break off the leaves, but the roots still stay there. And from there, it regrows again. They actually guarantee it up to 6 months.
Okay.
So that's a long-term solution that we've got for the weeds. But obviously, with the wind factors and all of that, there's always seeds blowing around. So it's not to say that if the pre-emergent is in the soil or in the paving that there won't be any germination of any sort. So there's always weeds, if you look at the hard surfacing or rocks, that will appear, and that's why we continuously spray for those weeds. So the other product that a lot of the homeowners can see us spray is the Super Lawn Weeder, which is a selective herbicide which we spray on the lawn areas. The lawn areas then is covered with all the broadleaves and also creeping weeds, which is basically the ones which cover the lawn. So that is a product that we spray for also seed germination, and from there basically it takes about 7 days for the weeds to absorb the actual chemical. That's why in some areas it looks like we maybe didn't cut the area, but it's because after spraying that area we can't cut for 5 days.
Right.
So for 5 days that area will look a bit rough and so forth, but also it needs time to be absorbed by the weed to go into the root and completely kill off the whole plant.
Right.
All right. Then there's a third product that I thought we can talk about today, which is a gel that we spray within flower beds to combat grasses. So that's why it's difficult, because again, mechanical removal of grasses in those areas within beds, it's difficult to get the root out. So the guys sometimes just break off the leaves.
And especially if it's a rose bed.
Especially if it's a rose bed. So basically, yeah, from there we actually start and we spray all the beds. And again, it takes a bit of time for the product actually to go down to the roots. So some beds you'll see there's some grass in it and so forth. But it takes time, and after you'll see it dying again. Unfortunately, the gel, the period actually is much longer than the other products, so you're looking about 2 to 3 weeks for that to take effect on some of the beds. So the other problem that we also face with on the estate is the wind factor. Because we can't spray like selective products and all of that if the wind is too strong. Because if there's drift onto other plants, then those plants will actually die as well.
Sure.
So that's why it's very crucial that we have a perfect window, weather window, to spray actually plants and selectively kill those plants off.
Right.
So I mean, like this product this guy is spraying now, if there's any drift onto lawn or other beds, those plants will definitely be kaput.
I see the guys dressed in a PPE, personal protection.
Yes.
Obviously, a lot of these chemicals are toxic,
Yes.
and that's obviously to limit his exposure to the chemicals.
That's correct. Yes.
But what about when you're spraying near houses? What are the chances of drift into a garden or something like that?
It's basically the same scenario. If we have a window where we can spray and we minimize any drift to houses or residents or whatever, we make sure that we try and get to that specific window. I mean, if there will be some drift, but all the chemicals that we actually use is approved by Henchem, is where we actually get the chemicals from, and all the chemicals that we spray on the site here is a yellow badge, which means if you do get in contact with it, you can just rinse your hands off with water.
Right.
It's not as dangerous as some other chemicals which we actually do not use on the site.
Right. Okay, so we're basically reducing cost using best practices.
Yes.
And the best chemicals we can at this present time.
That's correct, yes.
Hopefully over time more chemicals will evolve that are a bit safer to the environment and things like that. So yeah, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, as you said, my people all wear the PPE clothing to protect themselves, and whenever we use any chemicals on the site, we bear in mind the safety of anybody in close quarters, or if there's any residents or children playing, we actually schedule it for another time to do that area, and we schedule it in such a way that we actually make sure that there are no people around within 2 hours.
Okay.
So yeah, when we do any spraying, we make sure that there's safety protocols in place, and that's why we've got a safety file in our office where we actually issue chemicals. We issue the PPE every day we spray, and there's a control sheet where the operator needs to be trained and he signs for the chemicals, so there's no mishaps, so that if something is wrong, we can go back to that control register to make sure this was sprayed in that time, that date.
It seems like we're in good hands, folks. So please, if you find the information valuable, give us a thumbs up. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask them, and I'm sure there will be a lot. Until next time.